Hello, hello. Welcome back to the weekly Monday Motivation Podcast, No More Excuses. This is your host, Sandi Ballard. If this is your first time listening, welcome. Thanks for being here. And for all of you who have continued to listen to me for the almost 3 years, this is podcast 153. So yes, almost 3 years. Can you believe it? But thanks. Thanks for continuing to listen and coming back and listening again and sharing your comments, suggestions, questions, and for sharing the podcast in general with others. So, appreciate ya. And March is here, the first Monday in March. March is, I guess, bringing it in like a lion, at least in my head, with the cold, gray, and snowy weather here in Indy. So it shall soon be better, right? In like a lion, out like a lamb, right? So you got to keep that positive outlook, because if you've never thought to yourself how it could ever get worse, you've probably seen it get worse. I know I have. So I no longer ever ask, God, can this get any worse? Because it has. I just now only ask how it can and or will get better. All right, enough of my positive soapbox outlook, right? Let's get to it. Burnout. Yes, last week was about burnout. So challenges, frustrations, overwhelm, leading to burnout. And there's that damn song in my head. Name that tune. You guys got it? Burnout? I'm not going to sing. Blue Oyster Cult. Yeah, you're welcome. For those of you that are old enough, it's in your head now. So if you want to get that damn song out of your head, what are you going to do about it? Think positively, right? Yes. Well, that's part of it. But last week's podcast was about checking in on you, not necessarily your progress. I mean, it's about looking at what you've accomplished so far this year, checking your progress, if not much, or even if you're just kicking ass, check yourself. How are you feeling? How have you been working on things? If you've been running on empty, there's another song there. If you've been running on empty for a while, you know where you're headed, and it's going to be ugly. And you also now, or you should now, know what you need to do. Check out, reward yourself, all that shit I've been talking about for the last few weeks. Whether it's a few hours a day, a weekend, or a week, if you can. Especially if you're a super high overachiever, all in a day's work, never give yourself a break kind of person, you have to take the time to give your mind and body a break and then come back with a fresh mind, right? And then you can ask yourself, now what? What's next? I've asked many of my clients that question this year so far, and many of the people have been starting out just kicking ass. I mean, I've talked about how good my year is so far. It ended strong, and I'm just keeping the momentum going. And that's as well as many of my clients and just friends, people I've know in general. People are talking more positively. And I look at them, congratulate them, usually a high five, and I'm like, now what? And that usually gets me a blank stare. Like, the hell? Give me a minute, And I'm not trying to discount what they've done or get them to move faster. I want them to think bigger. I mean, come on. I don't want to push anyone into burnout, but my job is to challenge people, right? And you can't stop now. The most recent client I met with was one of my managers of it's a company. She's manager of one of the departments. I've talked about her off and on through many podcasts. She's had a revolving door of staff, and recently it got her to start using a to-do list, and she just in the last 2 weeks implemented that with her team to use a daily to-do list. And the response has been overwhelming, like fantastic, overwhelming in a good way, overwhelmingly fantastic, I guess. The jobs have stayed caught up. The chatter's been reduced, so you can imagine the productivity has increased. Sometimes they were 5 to 7 days behind on orders. And so for the last 2 weeks since they've used this to-do list, they have not been behind. Maybe just finishing up the next day, but that's it. So they're being efficient, and in turn the energy level is much better. So when I asked her, after we high-fived, what's next? She thought for a second, and then said, well, I guess it's living by our word of the year, consistency. I loved it. I was like, that's fantastic, right? She said she just needs to keep doing what she's been doing, keep using her to-do list so she's practicing what she's preaching, keep checking in on her staff as support versus micromanaging and scolding. And she has more time now to work with the other team lead and the owner on what's next for the company as a whole. It's exciting shit right there. But I have to say, it's been a tough road for her and for me. She had to learn to trust me and to try out what I was suggesting. And I've only said, I told you so once. Now I smile and say, see, I knew you could do it. I knew you could do it. And how do you feel about that? How do you feel about everything you've achieved? And it's a good response from her, and usually is and has been for many of my clients. So this week, I'm asking all of you, what's next? So she is now the shit show, or the ringmaster of her shit show, right? So are you the ringmaster of yours? And I'm going to ask you again, what's next? Whether you have shit going sideways or you're the ringmaster, what's next? Email me, sballard@growingforward.biz, post here in the comment section. Tell me what's next for you. I look forward to hearing from you. Have a great week. Cheers.